Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Overwatch Weekly. I actually have a decent amount of stuff to talk about this week, so let's jump into it and cover everything that there is. To start, we have some new patch notes on the experimental card. These are all changes that tackle CC abilities, so your stuns and whatnot. So on a sleep dart, sleep duration lowered from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. Brigitte's Shield Bash stun duration lowered from 0.75 to 0.65 seconds. Mei's Endothermic Blaster Primary Fire Free Stun duration lowered from 1.5 to 1.3 seconds. Blizzard's duration lowered from 5 to 4.5 seconds. McCree's Flashbang stun duration lowered from 0.85 to 0.7 seconds. Reinhardt's Earth Shatter knockback duration lowered from 3 to 2.5 seconds. Sigma's Accretion knockdown duration is now a fixed 0.8 seconds instead of scaling with distance. And cast time was reduced from 0.75 to 0.6 seconds. The interesting one is Roadhog's Whole Hog. The knockback was increased by 20%. Jeff Kaplan kind of talked about this a little bit, and his thing was that essentially when you look at Roadhog, one of the issues that he has, right, is that, or well, not an issue. Something that basically you have with Roadhog is if you try to put the or do damage with Roadhog, right, and you try to use his whole hog, what it's gonna basically do, right? You have more damage to be done to you if you're not getting knocked back as much, essentially. But they also just wanted to try to buff the ult. As Jeff says, we actually want to try to buff his ult a little bit to make it more impactful. It's not as much of a pure buff as it might seem at first. While you will knock enemies back more, you're also likely to push them out of damage more unless you corner them. So you're not going to do as much damage, potentially. So it is an interesting one, but it is a bit of a buff for being able to move people back. But that was just something I wanted to do because Roadhog is not in the best spot right now. But that's all that's on the experimental card, so check that out if you haven't yet. We also got a dev update this past week, which I will link to in the description. I'm not going to talk about everything that Jeff talked about there. There's a lot of things to get at from that. But the main things were there's going to be a new communication wheel, which you can customize, and it's going to have things like fall back. There's going to be a countdown option. There's going to be a ton of new different options you can select, and they will be all voiced, so you'll be able to hear what's going on. So that's coming to the it's on the PTR right now. It just doesn't have the voice acting yet. There's also going to be an improved queue system. Basically, if you get put into a match and the match ends before it starts, you'll be put right back where you were in the queue, so you won't go back to the beginning of the queue. And there's also going to be some patch notes that are going to be present in the Overwatch client now. You won't have to open up a second window for it. Those are the main things that I pulled from it, at least that I remembered. Like I said, it's linked in the description if you want to check it out, and you can see it there. I also included a link to the PTR patch notes, which include the improved communication wheel. We have changed how communication wheel throttling works in the game. You can use up to 3 communication wheel actions in rapid succession, but there is now a delay between subsequent communications, similar to how Tracer's blink ability works in the game. And they retuned to play the game to emphasize more active participation in fights. And then there's some hero updates as well. For Ashe, her Viper now reaches maximum zoom halfway through the aim down sights instead of at its conclusion. For Doomfist's Seismic Slam, you can now hold down the ability 2 button to use the Seismic Slam as soon as able, and valid if using the aerial version. When landing very close or on top of enemies, the enemy will be pushed in front of or away from Doomfist slightly instead of having them besides or behind, or I guess it's in front of and away. And aerial Seismic Slam no longer has a slight acceleration time, which should make it arrive at the destination more reliably. For D.Va, they restored functionality, allowing D.Va to maintain her current aim pitch when demeching. And Mei's Cryo Freeze now behaves like Mei's Ice Wall when it comes to interactions. Cryo Freeze will block line of sight and collision in much the same way. And they also added nighttime versions of the Workshop Island and Workshop Expanse maps to the Workshop. So those are all the PTR changes. Those are the changes that are on the game right now. Let's move on to the Overwatch League for some stories. The first one is the one that I thought was going to be the main story that I was going to talk about in this video, but it's not. Starting in May, we will be getting Overwatch League tournaments. They will be at the end of the month, so May 23rd, May 24th, May 22nd. Those are the days we have the tournament for the month of May. And it's pretty interesting. So the way that it works essentially is we have a North America tournament and an Asia Pacific tournament. And the teams will compete in a bracket, which I'll link to the thing in the description down below. It's very difficult to describe it without being able to show it to you, but the teams will compete in a bracket. Teams pick their opponents. You know, the higher seed will pick an opponent, and then from there they move on to another set of matches where the top 4 teams, you know, in the North American region, for example, have automatic buys to that thing. They pick opponents. It's weird. I don't fully understand it yet. So I need to see it in action before I really get a good grasp on it, because it is a little weird. But the important thing is that the winning team of the tournament, the person who wins the entire tournament, gets a buy, not a buy, they get a win total towards their season record that, you know, goes in towards playoffs, right? So there are benefits to winning these tournaments. So the person who wins the tournament gets 3 additional wins. The second place team gets 2 additional wins. And the third and fourth place teams get 1 win. And that's for both regions. Now, I'm going to talk about this a little more in a video, I think tomorrow. I'm going to dedicate a video to it, so I'll go more in detail about my thoughts on it. But that is what is going on with this tournament structure. This is a really brief kind of run through TLDR. I'll have a video tomorrow where I'm just going to go through, read everything about it, and try to explain it to you and talk about it more. So be on the lookout for that, because I think this tournament structure is very interesting. And I was going to dedicate more time to that today, but then we got other news that we're going to talk about now. And that is, of course, the news with Sinatraa. Sinatraa, the 2019 Overwatch League MVP, the Grand Finals champion with the San Francisco Shock, 2019 World Cup winner with the with Team USA, and then the everything really World Cup MVP. We have Sinatraa, who has left the Overwatch League. He has retired from the Overwatch League, has left the San Francisco Shock to play Valorant for Sentinels. So let's talk about this. So Sinatraa, in a twit longer, basically said he lost passion for the game and wants to play Valorant instead, which is understandable. You know, if you lose passion for a game, there's not really much you can do about it. I think it's a very interesting thing. And before I go any further, I want to say something that may sound very hypocritical based on what I say later in the video. But I 100% support Sinatra's decision. he made the move that he feels is best for him, and who am I to say what is or isn't the best move for somebody? If what he wanted to do was stop playing a game that he no longer found to be that fun and instead go over to a game that he was very much enjoying, I'm not going to tell him that that's a bad idea. I'm not going to tell him that he shouldn't do that. I'm not going to tell him that he made the wrong decision. I can just have opinions on what the situation is and what ended up happening that could be different than maybe what other people feel, or even maybe Sinatraa feels. With all that being said, though, right? Though I think that Sinatraa made a decision that I support, I don't necessarily think it was the smartest decision or the right decision, considering everything that is going on. And this isn't just coming from somebody like, somebody who is an Overwatch fan first and foremost. Yes, I love Overwatch. Yes, I love the Overwatch League. I also really like Valorant. I think Valorant is a fun game. I play somewhat decently amount of time. That was not what I meant to say. I play it somewhat frequently with some friends of mine, but it's not a game that I'm clamoring to play more than I play Overwatch, right? I still really like Overwatch. I still really like Overwatch more than I like Valorant. But I'm also a support and tank player. I'm not a damage player. I'm not someone who plays Valorant and is very good at it. If I wasn't playing Valorant with friends, I wouldn't be playing Valorant. Like, that's just how it is for me. But this isn't coming from somebody who doesn't like Valorant, because I do like Valorant. When you look at the infrastructure that is present currently between both Overwatch and Valorant in terms of esports, there's a very big difference. Valorant is a game that has been out for about 3 weeks at this point in time, right? And has no official release yet. It's still in beta. There's no talk yet about a professional scene, and I don't even think competitive play has been added to the game yet. It could be wrong. I haven't played in a few days. I know they are talking about it. I know they announced that it's coming. I don't know if it's actually been added to the game yet. So there's a lot of things that Valorant are still lacking. On top of that, not only have these things not been announced, we're also in a situation right now with COVID-19 where I don't even think it's a good idea to make a major life decision like that when you don't know when the world is going to reopen, right? Because there's a possibility that Valorant competitions don't start happening until next year. They don't start happening until December. They don't start happening until November. We don't know how long the world is going to be on lockdown. It could be a very long time. So when you look at that and you say, well, the world is in a major state of uncertainty, it seems like a huge risk and a huge thing to do to just jump in and join a new game. Now, I'm not saying that Sinatraa should have stayed with Overwatch, right? I don't think you can argue that necessarily, right? If you're not enjoying the game, I think retiring isn't an issue, right? But I think it's a bit more of a risk to take the jump right now and join a team already. Now, granted, that isn't necessarily true, right? If you're not enjoying the game, you don't have to stay with the game. And you can always, right now, while things are not in a state where Valorant has much going on esports-wise, you can always still go and stream, right? I think that's probably what he's going to end up doing. He's just going to go and stream and get money streaming, because that's really the best way to do it, I think, right now. And as Valorant kind of develops and as Sentinels really figures out what's going on, I'm sure Sinatraa will figure out more about what he's doing for his future and what he's going to be doing for Overwatch and Valorant going forward. Now, obviously, right, I think that it's very interesting to make this decision now when things are so uncertain and when I think the world is in such a state where, like, you don't know what you're going to do. But I just think that the risk that you're taking by abandoning the major support structure that is in place with Overwatch to join a game that has nothing is very interesting. especially when you are someone like Sinatraa, who's at the top of the game. You are arguably the best player in the world. Um, he hasn't having as strong of a season as he had last season, and he said that he wasn't motivated and wasn't playing super well. But I mean, I think that's ultimately that comes down to his. He wasn't really playing, so what do you expect from that? But I just think it's an interesting move. You know, you have someone like Taimu, somebody like Tavik, who are like, oh, I'm leaving Overwatch and I'm going to go play Valorant. They've also, their time in Overwatch had run its course. They weren't going to be in the Overwatch League anymore. They were never going to get brought back up to the Overwatch League because they had already had their time. Same with someone like Gods. So there's so many players who their time with Overwatch had run its course, and like the best thing to do would be to try to leave, to try to start up big in this next game, because at the end of the day, that happens for a lot of players with esports. They're always going to the next big thing to see if they can get big in that, because they didn't get big in the last one. And that's really what I think we're seeing with a lot of things, but that's not the case with Sinatraa. Sinatraa was at the top of the game and left, and you can have whatever feelings you want about him leaving the team. You know, at this point in the season, right? The leadership figure leaving the defending champions. This point in the season, when they have a chance to potentially repeat, because they look to be a very strong and solid team. You know, and I think Sinatraa leaving certainly has an impact on this team. I don't think it has an impact too big. He wasn't really even playing, and I still think they're very good. I think that honestly, Sinatra's a very good player. I still don't think he was the best DPS player on that team. I just think he played the heroes that were meta in 2019 the best. I still think Striker is honestly insane, and I think Striker is overall a better DPS player. But Sinatraa certainly had some heroes that he played at such a high level that were really good this past season that it made Sinatraa really a standout player and made him the MVP, which I think is essentially what happens. You don't have to be the best at your position. You just have to be your best at that time to be there. But he was definitely the best Western DPS player, don't get me wrong. But I think that it's a very interesting situation to look at. And then there's a lot of people who think that this is like, oh, Overwatch is dead, Overwatch is dying. This is certainly a hit to Overwatch and the Overwatch League, but one 20-year-old's decision isn't going to completely alter the Overwatch League, right? They will be fine. They will survive. The San Francisco Shock will be fine. They will survive. It's really, at this point in time, just a matter of seeing what happens, seeing how the game kind of lives and dies. You know, if the game is dead, the game was dead before Sinatraa left, right? Like, let's be honest. Sinatraa leaving didn't kill Overwatch or Overwatch League, right? It certainly will impact it somewhat, because it may get, you know, people who really like watching Sinatraa may not watch anymore. They're going to go watch him play Valorant. But that was going to happen already anyway. Overwatch, look, the game is almost 4 years old at this point. You're going to run into issues when that happens. When you go over basically the time that you kind of are expected to survive, you run into issues like that. Very few games are able to keep that hype behind their esport for prolonged periods of time. And Overwatch has done a good job, but other shooters are entering the scene now that look very good and look very promising, and they're challenging Overwatch as a result. You know, you look at something like League of Legends. League of Legends is succeeding because it does what it does better than anybody else, and no one has really been able to challenge them. People have tried, obviously. Blizzard tried with Heroes of the Storm, but it didn't succeed at doing that. So it's only natural that after almost 4 years of a game being out, and you know, even longer when you look at the beta, like, it's only natural for the game to start to lose its influence, right? Like, League of Legends and Counter-Strike are kind of exceptions to the rule that have been very, very successful and very popular for very long periods of time. But that isn't normal for an esport to really kind of stay that popular without sequels, without new things that are added to it, right? Like, fighting games are a whole other thing, right? But fighting games, typically, with the exception of like Melee, right? It's the new fighting game is the one that people are talking about, right? And they have to keep making new ones, and that's how those fighting games stay popular for the most part. So there's a lot with this situation. It's very complicated. I wish Sinatraa the best. I hope that he kills it in Valorant. I'll be rooting for him in Valorant, but I think it was a very risky move to make, a very interesting move to make. Something that I'm surprised he made the decision, but I didn't make the decision. I'm not Sinatraa. I'm not the one who decides what's best for him. So I will let everything go as it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this stuff, though, whether it be Sinatraa or any of the other things that I talked about today. I really would love to hear what you have to say about it. I'm in a bit of like a weird place with it because part of me thinks it was a bad idea, but that's also potentially emotional connection to Overwatch and thinking that was a bad move. But I also, part of me wants to criticize him more for the move when I'm like, yeah, but I mean, if that's what he wants to do, like that's what he wants to do, who am I to tell him what not to do? It's a very weird position for me. I'm very mixed on it, but I'd love to hear what you have to say on it and your opinions of that, or on anything else I talked about today. All of it is interesting to me. That's where I'm going to end this video off, so thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But I hope you all have a wonderful day. Hope you're all staying safe, staying healthy, and yeah, I'm going to get out of here. Bye-bye.